Hello there, children.
Greetings and welcome to the legendary Jack Show, starring Jack's Big Boots. We're bringing you quality content on our YouTube channel established in 2021. This video is about the virtual Black History Museum, and it is an awareness project by Abrianna, Oceanside, established in 2017. We're going to give you a slight tour of this museum. Although Black History Month is honored during the shortest month of each year, February, we know and we honor and we cherish Black history every day, each and every day, 365 days a year, 24/7, not just during the month of February. So with that, let's take a walk and we're going to go inside the museum, give you a slight tour, and let you see exactly some of the things that I was able to see and learn about. Some very, very important and interesting factoids. And so anyways, we have some posters here. Angela Davis in the middle, and we have Josephine Baker, the black artist who exiled to Paris, France for a better way of life. We have more pictures on this side of the museum. These are also some pictorials. I wish I could give you more details on these, but it's going to take a little bit of time to do that. So with that, I'm just going to show you some of the pictures so that you can see them for yourself. Anyways, we're going to go over to this. This was a very interesting poster here. It says, "We employ white help and cater to white people." Talk about some privilege there. Anyways, you don't see any signs that say that about black people, but nonetheless, we have that. Here's another factoid about the Stonewall situation, also in Ferguson. And then we have here is the "I Have a Dream" speech. And as you see, it's plastered on 3 different plaques here at the museum. They love to repeat the "I Have a Dream" speech by Martin Luther King. They fail to note his last speech in 1968, where he mentions that he has led his people into a lion's den and that we are going to Washington to get our check. That's right, our reparations check. That is shortly after when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Anytime we talk about black economics, people lose their minds. It's okay for everyone else, but for black people, well, they don't like that. So here we have Jim Crow in uniform. We have our servicemen, our black men who served in all the wars, protecting this country, only to come back and be treated like second or third class citizens. And so anyways, we're going to move on to this little factoid here. Did you know Betty Boop? This story is very, very interesting, and I'm going to pause for a moment only because I need to give this a little more breath here. So black people, did you know that Esther Jones was the real Betty Boop? That's right. The iconic cartoon character Betty Boop was inspired by a black jazz singer in Harlem. Introduced by cartoonist Max Fleischer in 1930, the caricature of the jazz age flapper was the first and most famous sex symbol in animation. Betty Boop is best known for her revealing dress, curvaceous figure, and signature vocals, boop boop a doop. While there has been many controversy over the years, the inspiration has been traced back to Esther Jones, who was known as Baby Esther and performed regularly in the Cotton Club during the 1920s. Baby Esther's trademark vocal style of using boops and other childlike scat sounds attracted the attention of actress Helen Kane during a performance in the late 1920s. After seeing Baby Esther, Helen Kane adopted her style or rather stole her style, and began using boops in her songs as well. Finding fame early on, of course, because she was white, Helen Kane often included this baby style into her music. When Betty Boop was introduced, Kane promptly sued Fletcher and Paramount Public Corporation, stating that they were using her image and style. However, video evidence came to light of Baby Esther performing in a nightclub, and the courts ruled against Helen Kane, stating she did not have exclusive rights to the booping style or image, and that the style, in fact, predated her. Baby Esther's baby style did little to bring her mainstream fame, and she died in relative obscurity, but a piece of her lives on in the iconic character Betty Boop. So let's just state for the record here and now that Betty Boop, the white cartoon character, is a fraud. That's right, a fraud. Her character is imagined behind a black jazz artist. She was a jazz singer in Harlem. Again, she was a jazz singer in Harlem who performed in the Cotton Club during the 1920s. So anytime we see this cartoon character and all its images and all of its trademarked things that earns a lot of revenue, it is not right, and it's fraudulent, as it was stolen from a black person. What else is new? Let's move on. So this next topic of discussion is going to be a hot topic. Some people might find it offensive, but it is the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So did you know that interracial marriage in the United States was banned in 1664, and it was not overturned until 1967? During the 17th and early 18th century, the growing number of interracial marriages, also known as miscegenation, mentioned in your Bible, between blacks and whites, led to the passage of this new law. The first anti-miscegenation law enacted was in the colony of Maryland in 1664, and additional colonies quickly followed suit. These marriages were prohibited, and penalties included the enslavement, exile, or imprisonment of the white perpetrators. These laws grew and evolved over the years, and attempts were even made to modify the Constitution to ban interracial marriage in all states. It would take 300 years for this law to be overturned. In 1967, Richard Loving, a white man, and Mildred Jeter, a black woman, were married in the District of Columbia. When they returned home to Virginia, they were arrested and convicted of violating the state's anti-miscegenation law. They each faced a year in jail, and their case went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court found in favor of the Lovings in the famous trial Loving versus Virginia. They ruled that prohibiting interracial marriage on state and local levels was unconstitutional. This meant that marriages between the races were legal in the country for the first time since 1664. Wow. Now, in my humble opinion, it's too bad that this law was overturned to where interracial marriages became the rule of law. The reason why I say this is because, as it turns out, interracial marriages have caused major problems throughout our history, pretty much wherever it exists. Now, I'm not even going to go into the interracial marriages in other countries because I don't know how they exist there, but I will tell you this, that when white men were able to go to Africa and rape the women, and I'm speaking in particular of South Africa, so many white men raped black women that they created a whole class of people known as coloreds. If you don't know about this, research it and find out if I'm telling the truth. But those coloreds end up being a whole another group of people, and unfortunately the black natives who exist there in the same country with them, they end up having problems with these mixed race people. Here in the United States, we experience similar situations right today of mixed race people who unfortunately make it very hard for either the white race or the black race, whichever mixed part they are part of. Giving you an example would be how people like Barack Obama, for instance, he was raised by his white grandmother. He did absolutely nothing, well, not very much anyways, for black Americans during his presidency, and he's mixed race himself. So much for his blackness. But let's move on. Alright, as you can see on your screen, this next point says, for the good of America. I don't know how good this is, but did you know that the United States is the only land on earth where human beings were burned at the stake? In 4 years, 1918 to 1921, 28 people were publicly burned by American white mobs. 3,436 people were lynched during 1889 to 1922. So the question is rape the cause of lynching? Absolutely not. These people were simply uncivilized and barbaric. And the lynchers go unpunished. And so it reads, to maintain civilization in America and for the good name of the nation, before the world, you cannot escape your responsibility. Will you not at least aid the organization which has been fighting for 10 years to wipe out our shame? This poster here was presented by the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That's a whole nother issue and a whole nother video, so let's just move on. So here's another despicable point of our history here in America: evidence of intimidation and fascist crimes by the United States of America, the war on the Black Panther Party during 1968 and 1969. They speak about Arthur Morris, the first Panther murdered by government agents. They speak of little Bobby Hutton, who was 17 years old. Police shot Hutton 12 times after he surrendered and was stripped to his underwear. Do any of these kind of actions ring a bell in your ear right to this day? Unfortunately, we still see acts of fascism and intimidation by our so-called law enforcement right today in 2021 against black people. This poster is talking about the murders by the LA police, the Fred Hampton killing, and the Bobby Seals killing as well. This virtual Black History Museum is filled with a lot of information that you can actually learn a great deal from. If you're black, or a person of color for that matter, on SL, and you didn't take advantage of visiting this museum, shame on you. But let's move on. So, did you know that the earliest recorded protest against slavery was by the Quakers in 1688? The Quakers, also known as, quote, the Society of Friends, unquote, have a long history of abolition. But it was 4 Pennsylvania Friends from Germantown who wrote the initial protests in the 17th century. They saw the slave trade as a grave injustice against their fellow man and used the golden rule to argue against such inhumane treatment, regardless of skin color. Quote, we should do unto others as we would have done unto ourselves, unquote. In their protests, they stated, quote, pray, what thing in the world can be done worse towards us than if men should rob or steal us away and sell us for slaves to strange countries, separating husband from their wife and children. I'm sorry, but when we think about men and women who are civilized, we can't possibly think of European ancestors that were engaging in this type of behavior as civilized. No, in fact, they were barbaric and quite uncivilized. That is America's history. But nonetheless, let's move on. Alright, so this next point of view we're going to look at is the lynchings of Negro children in Southern courts. Let's not be fooled that this still happens right today in these United Snakes of America. But during the period between the Civil War and World War II, thousands of African Americans were lynched in the United States. Lynchings were violent and public acts of torture that traumatized black people throughout the country and were largely tolerated by state and federal officials. That's right, they turned a blind eye to this. These were men and women who went along with these type of acts. And yet you have people saying that, well, I didn't have anything to do with it. Yes, you did. But I digress. These lynchings were terrorism. Terror lynchings peaked between 1880 and 1940 and claimed the lives of African American men, women, and children who were forced to endure the fear, humiliation, and barbarity of this widespread phenomenon unaided. This, again, is part of American history. This is history that they won't teach you in the schools. They don't want you to know the ugly stain that's still there. Alright, so this picture is of a black and white photograph postcard of an elderly man gathering possessions after the 1908 race riot in Springfield, Illinois. We also know of the race riot of 1990, the Red Summer riot. But anyways, this other poster here is of Coontown suffragettes. This is also an interesting picture you should check out as well. So this picture here is where must Negro Americans wait another 100 years for freedom against tokenism and gradualism. Alright, now this next slide here is really mind-boggling because it shows how African people have influenced American life in so many ways unimaginable. Nonetheless, vaccinations, which we are looking at right now in 2021, did you know that inoculation was introduced to America by a black slave, a black human being turned into a slave rather? That's right. Few details are known about the birth of Onesimus. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but it is assumed he was born in Africa in the late 17th century before eventually landing in Boston. One of 1,000 people of African descent living in the Massachusetts colony, Onesimus was a gift to the Puritan church minister Cotton Mather from his congregation in 1706. Onesimus told Mather about the centuries-old tradition of inoculation practiced in Africa. By extracting the material from an infected person and scratching it onto the skin of an uninfected person, you could deliberately introduce smallpox to the healthy individual, making them immune. That's right. Opposed politically, religiously, and medically in the United States and abroad, public reaction to the experiment put Mather and Boylston's lives in danger despite records indicating that only 2% of patients requesting inoculation died compared to the 15% of people not inoculated who contracted smallpox. Onesimus' traditional African practice was used to inoculate American soldiers during the Revolutionary War and introduced the concept of inoculation to the United States. Lastly, this next slide here shows the incarceration rates by race and ethnicity in our jails and state and federal prisons. Of course, we know that today here in America, there is the school to prison pipeline that's designed. It's by design by white America, and it's really geared towards brown and black and other ethnic groups. Definitely is not intended for white people. That's right. I say that because today we see how many times white Americans are let off the hook for crimes that they commit. We saw that recently at America's state capitol when Trump supporters and others decided to storm and cause an insurrection. It was domestic terrorism, but of course they slapped them on the wrist and swept it under the rug, so to speak. Anyways, I'm going to end this video here. You can see the stats on the screen, how the incarceration rates listed by race, and you can see a major problem that we still face right here in America. This is Legendary Jax coming to you here from the virtual Black History Museum. And again, it is sponsored by Abrianna, Oceanside, and we give major thanks and kudos to Abrianna, Oceanside, for bringing this virtual Black History Museum for the people, regardless of your skin color. And if you're one of those people who says that, quote, you don't see color, unquote, then you too should be visiting or should have visited the virtual Black History Museum. After all, it does involve your history too. This is Legendary Jax. Please like and share, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Take care.